Okay, I think we're recording.
Yeah, I got a notification it was, Hali.
Okay. I think some like the AI thing, the note taker, kind of threw me off at the beginning. So, okay, well, let me do a little introduction. I'm going to actually let you introduce yourself, mostly Scott. I'll let you let the audience know what you would like them to know about you. Scott is a fairly new member of our team at Choose Recovery Services. We got to spend quite a bit of time together a few weeks ago at a conference, and we got to know each other. We share a few clients, so we've gotten to case consult together quite a few times, and super excited to have you be part of our team. Scott, there's your bio. There's Scott's bio if anybody wants to check out that. But why don't you tell us a little bit more about
I'll
you,
check it
Scott?
out.
Do you know what it says?
I hope so. I hope so.
Might have been a while, but why don't you let our audience know a little bit about you, maybe like your ideal clients and where your passion comes from for this work?
Yeah, boy, that's an easy place to start, Hallie. My passion comes from having been in this healing process for a really long time. And I know for me, my ability to get real, truthful, honest, um, open, willing. It was a really tough nut for me to crack, and sadly, um, my wife Laura had to um, tolerate, wait until that happened for me, and so this is a completely new practice, new career for me that I knew I had to get into. Once I finally knew I could help other men. And the topic I wanted to bring tonight, we can talk about it as much as anybody wants to, is emotions. As I've come through this healing process, I have totally recognized that this whole process on the addict side is about the ability to navigate one's emotions. And at the same time, we are navigating the partner's own emotions. So we have two things going on at once. And I could not be there for my partner's emotions until I could truly learn to manage my own. So it's such a critical piece. And so I had been sober for quite some time. And yet I wasn't giving my wife emotional safety. Um, Still wasn't able to truly give empathy, couldn't figure it out until I dove deeper and deeper and deeper and just kept finding new areas of things that I needed to work on. And ultimately, I finally hit upon some things that really started to connect dots for me. And once I figured that piece out, I knew I could help other men. My wife had wanted me in this. My wife is an APSATS coach as well. Um, and she'd wanted me to join her. And I just didn't feel like I could help other men, help other couples heal until I had found that um, last piece. And then when I did, I immediately went into this because it is so painful. And when I thought I could help other men heal, I knew I could help relationships heal because I see that as being the key. So here I am.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, for your vulnerability and sharing that. I have a few of the men who are in my Help or Heal group that have been working with you and have expressed how helpful you've been to them already. So I'm grateful that you're in this work and excited for your current and future clients and for us as a team at Choose to have you joining us in this really important work. I agree with you that I think um, healing is possible. It's not always the right thing for everyone. So I also hold space for that. And
Sure.
I do think it's possible and it's hard. It takes a lot of work. So
Absolutely.
it's definitely something that I always honor and respect the people who are reaching out to get support because we couldn't have, I mean, we're still in our work just like probably the rest of you are, but we can't do it alone. So it's important to have professionals on board, and we're grateful to have you here. So let's jump into our topic. I just put a message in the chat for those of you that might have logged on later. We are going to talk a little bit about emotions on both sides of the fence here. Um, I actually don't even like that phrase, both sides of the fence, but both sides of the pattern of
Sure.
healing for both betrayed partners and individuals seeking recovery. But if you have questions that are related to other things, feel free to put those in the chat. And like I said at the beginning, you're welcome to unmute and use your voice if you want, if you have questions or comments for us. But if you're not comfortable doing that, we'll use the chat to field your questions. So we're going to start into this conversation around emotions and see where that goes. And we will try to weave in your questions, or if they're totally off topic from this, we will make time to get to those as much as we can. So don't be shy. Feel free to put those questions in the chat. But so Scott, where would you like to start? Where do you think is a good place for us to start jumping into this topic of emotions?
You know, I think the best place to start is the hardest spot. And I think that spot is, and I'll use a lot of personal stories. I hope that's okay. It can be some of my work as well, but personal stories are just so easy because it was the path. So my wife knew me as a calm, um, strong, hardworking, good husband. Of course, she didn't know what was going on the other side of my world with pornography and an emotional affair. And so then discovery happens, and we get rid of these behaviors, whether they're sexual in nature, maybe we're stopping alcohol, and we realize that almost out of nowhere, these emotions start getting really big because they no longer have something that is suppressing them. So we start to find, you know, right at discovery, we start to find all these things like gaslighting and minimization and defensiveness, anger, sometimes rage. And so I really like, you know, at Discovery, we talk about sexual sobriety and on the addicts side at that point, they're working things like three circle plans, trying to define what their sobriety is, trying to define what makes them a sober person. And then when they get to sobriety, so many people think like, okay, well, we've got sobriety and now all the pieces are going to fall into place. And the next stage, I really start to look at emotional sobriety, and I use the same kind of concept of a three circle plan and what goes in the middle of this three circle plan. And in the middle of that is the emotions that we're really having trouble controlling, similar to the sobriety, sexual sobriety pieces we're having trouble controlling. So in that middle circle might be anger, it might be rage, it might be minimization, defensiveness, avoidance. And these are all the pieces that the addict is using as defense mechanisms, barriers, um, keeping that relationship distant. And it's at a time when partners need them to show empathy, need them to come alongside of them with caring and understanding and openness and willingness. So emotions are such a struggle at that time. And one of the key, I mean, we have to start with ground zero, and that's with men pulling out feelings wheels and understanding a few times a day, like, what am I feeling in this moment? Because if we don't know what we're feeling, then we're just going to act based on whatever the baseline is going on under the hood with them. So if they're feeling criticized, if they're feeling lonely, if they're feeling anxious, all these things are going to come out as behaviors. So we truly have to understand, what am I feeling? And for most of the men I work with, it's a giant question mark. They don't know what they're feeling.
Yeah, and not only do they, a lot of times what I notice is they don't know what they're feeling, but they also have no body awareness. So they're not making a
Hmm.
connection to what's going on in their nervous system in
Hmm.
relation to their emotions. So their language around what it is they're feeling is pretty minimal, and also their awareness of what's happening in their body. Because some of those things are just, they're on autopilot. They have been for so long, and whether they've been using pornography or another substance to mask them, when that's no longer there, that comes to the surface automatically. And that, making that connection between the emotions and the body seems to be a challenge. I don't know if you would agree with that or not, but
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's one of the first things I ask is really, where are you feeling this? Where are you feeling it in your body? Because the body is often going to be one of the first signs of when there's discomfort, dis-ease in the body, and then we can that can be our alert system for, hey, I need to check this out. I need to check this out because if I don't, I know what's going to follow is behaviors that are damaging to my relationship.
hmm
And we're at such a crucial time in the relationship. All of a sudden, this is the place where all of a sudden it becomes about him.
hmm
And that is the last thing I want. I try to pull back and say, okay, so here's what happened. You shared with your wife that you had an affair or you're using pornography. You've broken your marriage vows, and now you're angry with her. Like, this is really confusing. And it's because we're not capable yet
hmm
of managing those really deep emotions.
hmm Yeah, which then, if we think about this on the flip side, it really, this is why a lot of times right after D-Day or Discovery Day or disclosure, whatever that looks like, we kind of move into crisis mode, is what comes to my
Mhm.
mind, or like
Mhm.
triage
Yeah.
almost. We're in this acute pain on both sides, and we have to attend to the things that are on fire currently.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, this lack of emotional awareness and ability to regulate adds to the pain and the confusion of that crisis mode or triage phase of everything.
Yeah, totally. And we have oftentimes two people are on fire for very different reasons,
Yeah, for sure.
and it so complicates it.
Yep. So messy.
It is. It
Um,
is.
I'm gonna throw this app. This was kind of, I want, like, this came up to me when you were speaking about the feelings wheel a minute ago. I'm gonna throw the link to the app. Many of our clients that choose use this How We Feel app. It's not our app. It's just a free app you can get that can help you. It can give you alerts and reminders to check in with yourself. There's a place there to note where it is in your body. You can go a little deeper with a little AI tool it has in there. But if you are struggling with awareness around language for your emotions, the How We Feel app is a really great, easy, free place to start. You can have it right on your phone, and a good recovery tool to practice using if you need some practice in that language. Even for me as a betrayed partner, everybody's story is going to be a little bit different, but I grew up in a home where emotions weren't really talked about, or the only ones that were really allowed was like happy. And if you were sad or angry, you needed to go somewhere else and feel that. So even for me as a woman, this was important work for me to do, to use. We didn't have How We Feel back then, but I used an emotion wheel, and it like opened my mind to words I'd never even really um, associated with the things I was feeling. And it was really helpful to start to make sense of, because I could tell you angry really easily. But I couldn't tell you but once I started looking at what was underneath the anger started to make sense to me a little bit more, or what's underneath the sadness or the different ones. So tell us about the Dealing with Feeling by Mark Brackett.
Yeah. So I love Mark Brackett. He's the head of emotional intelligence at Yale. He wrote another book that's not coming to mind right now, but I know his second book is Dealing with Feeling. I think he also had a lot to do with the How We Feel app, which is wonderful. And he has some such really simple strategies. Um, you know, one of the things that shows up a lot, I ask every client, beginning of every single session, they know they walk in, okay, Scott, I'm feeling X, Y, or Z. And so many times it's going to come up with, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling judged. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
what are your goals today? Well, my goal is to, after this session, learn some tools that I can have a really healthy conversation with my wife. Great. Do the feelings, overwhelm, anxious, and judged, are they going to help you reach that goal? Yeah, not a chance. Not a chance. So, do I have another option? Can I think about this? Can I think about what's going on differently? Right. And it can be as simple as, yeah, my wife talked to me this morning over coffee and she said, you never do check-ins. And that made me feel criticized. Okay, do we have another option other than feeling criticized? Can I think about this differently? Yeah, well, I can think, yeah, I'm not really being criticized. I made an agreement with my wife who I betrayed, and she's coming to me with heartbreak and sadness. Does that make me feel a little bit differently? So we have to notice what we're feeling, and then we have to help ourselves think about things differently so that we can change the way we're feeling. And we can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes such presence. And the first thing it takes is knowing what we're feeling.
Yeah.
So important just to know what we're feeling and then to know maybe we don't have to be feeling this way.
Mm-hmm. Something that comes to my mind is something I hear from the men that I work with a lot of times. They use phrases like, she's coming at me, or she's criticizing me, or she is accusing me of something. And
She's bombarding me.
yeah. And
Yep.
even in that scenario that you just gave, really what's happening, and I'm not saying that betrayed partners are always regulated
Mhm,
when they come to a spouse with a, something like that. But really it's a bid for connection. It
mhm,
is a bid for safety, security, reassurance. And
mhm,
so it's received as criticism or accusation a lot of times, when really, if we can look at it for what it is, it's a spouse wanting connection and reassurance and safety. And so, kind of pulling back into that. Um, Also, so changing how we feel too, and allowing space, I think, for both to be
mhm,
to be there at the same time. Like, okay, that does feel overwhelming. I can't remember exactly the word that you
mhm.
used. That
Sure.
feels overwhelming, or I felt criticized. Okay, what does criticism feel like in my body? And really sitting
Mhm,
with that first before we can shift. I feel like everything in recovery we need to slow down, because I don't know if you agree with this, Scott, but when we're in these conflicting situations or these difficult conversations, it seems like we've both got our foot on the gas pedal. And when
mhm,
we have our foot on the gas pedal, we're really adding to the dysregulation that's happening. And it's
mhm.
almost like a freight train out of control. And so, as much as it feels urgent a lot of times, we really need to pull back, slow down, take a minute to notice what each of us are feeling in our body, maybe more than a minute. Take the time to work through those blind spots that might be coming up for us, and then being able to readdress the conversation or re enter the conversation from a more grounded, regulated state. And that's challenging.
Absolutely. And recovery is recovery is slow, meaning that from the addict perspective, here's a really silly example. One of my green circles, so the good things that I was doing to keep my sobriety intact was what does my vehicle look like?
Mm.
If my vehicle has stuff that I was using for work the day before still in it, if it has an empty drink container, I knew I was moving really fast. I was moving from one activity to the next. really fast. And when I was in good recovery, I was taking the time, I was balanced, and my vehicle would look clean. But no doubt, it's about slowing things down. And there's a reason, I think, Hallie, that we're hearing these big words. She's coming at me with both barrels. She's, um, bombarding me, all these things. So much of that is to perception, and largely the magnitude, I think, comes from their previous trauma, right? So the magnitude, their perception is coming from there. And that's why it can be so difficult to tone down that magnitude so we can see that our partner is really coming with a bid for connection
Hmm.
rather than what we think it feels like, which she's telling me I'm not good enough, I'm bad, I'm incapable, all those other things.
Yeah. And what you're saying there, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're saying there is those beliefs or those internal wounds of I'm not good enough or I'm never
Mhm.
going to get this right, those are oftentimes childhood wounds that have
Absolutely.
been unhealed, that are unresolved yet. And
Absolutely.
those are the ones that are on autopilot. Those are the ones
Mhm.
that have been riding the bus, driving the bus, and probably haven't even known it for most of our lives, which a lot of times is what led to the addictive type behaviors or the
Mhm.
sexual acting out. And so those are childhood wounds most of the time,
Mhm.
which we
Yep.
have to be able to slow down and go back and heal that. It feels so urgent a lot of times in this recovery, and we do need to get to a place of stability and stabilization. And then we need to be able to go back and heal those
Mhm.
deeper wounds, usually for both of us. Because a lot of times when I'm triggered as a betrayed spouse, it is absolutely triggering on my childhood wounding as well. And so it's important for both of us to be going back and doing that childhood work that a lot of us haven't done yet, which is why we're sitting here.
Absolutely. Yep, for sure.
Yeah, and that so the other piece to this, so we're talking about emotional just regulation, awareness, all of that for the addict side.
Hmm.
And if we think about this and kind of flip it for the betrayed partners, and we look at it through the lens of emotional safety,
Hmm.
let's talk about that a little bit because one
Yeah.
thing, the a word that I seem to sense is a little activating for a lot of guys is the word safety.
Hmm.
Safety is a hard word for them to hear because a lot of times they think, well, she's got a roof over her head. I'm not hitting her. There's food on the table. What do you mean she's not safe? She's safe. And of course, if those types of abuse are happening where there is other domestic violence happening,
Hmm.
we need a whole nother level of safety.
Sure.
But when we're talking about emotional and psychological safety, it's a different thing. But it's so important for a betrayed spouse to have that emotional safety for the relationship to repair. She can create her own, he or she can create their own emotional safety within themselves, and that's part of the work of a betrayed spouse is to create that space where we feel safe internally. And if the relationship has any hope of repair, there needs to be able to have emotional safety present from the betraying spouse.
Mhm.
So I don't know what you would add to that or where we should go with that, but I
Yeah.
just wanted to bring that side up.
No, totally. And I think if I can explain this right, maybe it's just in my own mind, but let me go for it and you tell me if this
Okay.
works. So I think I have a pretty cool way of thinking about emotional safety um, from the addict standpoint. And I come to this because, man, I hear this a lot, like when partners, sorry, when addicts are trying to show empathy, they use words like, I can understand you might feel, I can understand you see it this way. Truly, we cannot. We we have no chance of truly understanding this, but we can see. We can see. We can hear based on facial expressions, how partners respond to how we're being with them. So I try to teach this to all the guys that I work with. Like, if you can have your own, am I being emotionally safe meter, right? So if the partner is having a moment where maybe they're feeling triggered in our presence, if we are neutral in emotional safety, then they would not get more triggered, they would not get more calm. If in our presence we are a calming influence, helping them to navigate this trigger, then we are emotionally safe for them.
Mm-hmm.
If in our presence during the trigger, she is getting more activated, she is getting more out of her window of tolerance, then we are not being emotionally safe. And we can see this.
Mm-hmm.
We can totally see if our presence is helping her or if it's not.
Yeah. One thing I would just add when you said if we're emotionally neutral, she's not getting more or less triggered. I might argue that she might get more triggered if you're like, because
I,
I
yeah,
have,
so Hallie, I just mean not that we're emotionally neutral, but that we're neither making her more or less
yeah,
safe at the time.
yeah,
Like we're, get what I mean?
yep, yep. I guess what I was saying with that is that sometimes so I lead the Help or Heal group, and
Yep.
sometimes the guys are like, okay, so what I need to do is I just need to listen. So next time something comes up, I'm just going to listen. So they don't say anything and they
Sure.
listen, but their body language and their presence isn't
Sure.
actually there. So they're neutral, but what she's seeing is like not really presence with what she's going
Yeah.
through. And so that can actually like go,
Yeah.
oh my
So we're
gosh.
being unsafe.
Yeah.
If we're not making her nervous system settle,
Yeah.
then we're being emotionally unsafe.
And there's so much, I don't
Totally.
know the percentage, but it's high, like 70 or 80% of communication is nonverbal.
Hmm.
So, and especially when it's the man that's trying to create emotional safety and there's a woman, your energy, whether it's posture, whether it's tone of voice, inflection, eye contact, all of that is being sensed long before you ever even open your mouth. And
Hmm.
so, and throughout the whole time. So the nonverbal communication is such an important piece of emotional safety. And again, I'm not saying that betrayed partners are always 100% regulated. I know we're not. We're not perfect. We don't always come to a difficult situation or a triggering situation in the most helpful way all the time. But when I'm working with guys and they say, "Man, it just totally went off the rails and she totally lost it. She erupted even more and I don't know what." And I'm like, "Okay, let's back up. Let's back up. What how did it start? What was happening there? Because all we see is the like big explosion, but usually there was something that happened or didn't happen long before the explosion happened, where we need to back up all the way to there because all we see is the big explosion. So it's it's messy work. I'll plug this while we're kind of on that topic. We have a Help Her Heal intensive coming up. I think it's April is the Help Her Heal intensive, and there's still a few spots. So if any of you men out there are really, you have some sobriety under your belt and you're looking to work on this piece of emotional safety and understanding betrayal trauma, this is a great intensive. We do a lot of somatic work for that because so much of this and that inner child wounding is somatic. And so we do a lot of somatic work at the Help Her Heal Intensive and helping you understand betrayal trauma to help create this emotional safety for the relationship to have an opportunity to repair. Um, all right, I'm going to just remind everybody that if you have questions, you can tell Scott and I could probably talk all night about this, but we want to get to any of your questions. So I'll just remind those of you and anybody that logged on late that if you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, or if you want to use your voice, raise your hand and we will get to those. We want this really is for you, so we want to answer the questions that are most important for you.
And
So
Hallie, so I just want to affirm what you just said, and it's somewhat nebulous, but it is that I don't know, all the little things, all the non-tangibles, um, body stance, um, tone of voice, um, facial expression, all of those things are so unbelievably important, which is hard to work on as professionals. But they are so important. And I love, I always say uh, there is no series of words or phrases or paragraphs that are going to change the way your wife is feeling.
Hmm.
There's just not.
Hmm.
So it's our behavioral truth that is really going to help.
I think that's one of the things that a lot of times men get, they that gets in the way is when their wife is having an activation or she's triggered by something. And I love that this is a can be a good quality for guys in some ways. They're fixers. They want to solve problems and they want to fix things, and that is good in some situations. And when it comes to your spouse's emotions, they actually aren't something that needs to be fixed. You actually can't fix them. Now,
Mhm,
trust me, I wish you could. I wish I could just be activated and I could tell my husband to fix it and he could, but it's not the way it works.
mhm,
And so shifting your mindset around, oh my gosh, she's in pain and I caused it, which makes sense, right? It brings
mhm,
up usually some shame around things. I need to fix it. I think we need to shift our mindset around not fixing it, but witnessing it, sitting with it,
mhm,
supporting her through it.
mhm,
Somebody once used the phrase, and I don't know if this is the most important, the best one, but instead of understanding her, you stand under her, like in a supportive role. You may
yeah,
not fully understand the activation. It may not make sense to you. She may be expressing something that seems like totally different experience than what you had. You know how you can be in the same meeting with the same person, listening to the same speaker, and you walk away and go, man, that topic on forgiveness was so good. And the other person's like, they didn't talk about forgiveness. What did you hear? You know, so you can be in the same situation and have a totally different experience with it. It doesn't make either of you wrong. But it's more about, can you understand? So seeking to understand rather than seeking to fix is an important distinction, I think, that can help men move out of that temptation to fix it, whether that be shutting it down, proving. One of the challenges many of the guys I work with is like, but what she's triggered about isn't actually what's happened. And if she just understood that that's not what happened, she wouldn't be triggered. And we have to sit with the trigger first.
mhm.
We have to help them regulate. We have to help them calm and be that safe space. And then a lot of times there's space to talk about the different realities.
And then we can ask.
Yeah.
And then we can ask.
Hmm.
But first we have to help her with that trigger. One quote I like, Allie, I think you will also, is our job is to support the healing partner as they find their path of survival. Our
Hmm.
job is not to fix or cure.
Yeah. Yeah. And And if any betrayed partners are listening to this and they're like, well, he's the one that caused the pain, he should fix it. I'm
Mhm,
sorry. That's actually, even though it's not your fault that you're sitting here,
mhm,
it is our responsibility to do the work, to work through our own wounds and our own pain. And yes, the relational repair piece takes two individuals working really hard. And we both have our responsibility to do that work
mhm,
individually before we can do it together. Um, I think one of the things, I don't know what you would say about this, Scott, but it's so challenging for the individuals who are working to rebuild trust and create safety to move into that place of emotional safety because they are activated with their own wounds by their partner's triggers, by their partner's
mhm.
activation.
Yep.
And so I often say that sometimes they have like a extra heavy weight of an extra burden of
Mhm,
regulating their own selves and
mhm.
supporting their spouses. So
Sure.
I don't know, speak to that for me from a man's perspective.
Yeah, and I had just taken a note that something I really wanted to talk about, and I'll start here and I think lead to that. So, as a functional adult, when we are in our functional adult selves, we do have two responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities is to our partner, and the other responsibility is to the inner child, who this is the first time in most cases that we've ever let him be inside of us
Mm,
because we didn't identify him early in life. We didn't listen to him later on in life as we were choosing pornography or affairs or alcohol or drugs or whatever it is. And now that we are getting sober, that inner child tends to be heard loud and clear. And if we're not listening compassionately to that inner child, then the teenager, the behaviors of minimization, gaslighting, and all that are going to show up really strongly, further damaging our relationship.
mhm.
So yeah, it is a weight, and sorry, it's the torch we need to bear.
Yeah.
We have not, you know, let me say this. As humans, I think one of our big jobs is to understand and manage our own emotions. It just is. And for most of the guys, it's the first time they are learning to manage their emotions. So sadly, yeah, we end up in a place where we're doing two things at once, and they both need to happen at the same time.
Mhm.
They do.
Mhm.
And what I want, any comment on that? Because I wanted to go to one other thing, Hallie.
I was just going to share another resource.
Yeah,
My most recent episode on my Choosing to Stay podcast was with Dr. Eddie Caparucci, who has the inner child model of recovery approach, and it was a
yeah,
really interesting conversation around exactly what you just said. So I just threw that link in the chat if anybody wants to listen to that conversation.
yeah, absolutely. Um, one thing that I hear often is once the guys that I work with start to understand, okay, this is all about emotions, and then their partner understands this is all about emotions. So then we get into things like check-ins, right?
Hmm.
And so then he starts sharing his emotions, and then he comes back in the next session. He says, "Okay, I checked in. I've shared my emotions, and now she says I'm making it all about me. Like, what's going on here?" And I always say there's three big hints for sharing your emotions. Don't blame somebody else for your emotion. Don't ask somebody else to fix how you're feeling, and don't act based on how you're feeling, right? So if you're feeling criticized, we don't say something like, "Hey, if you wouldn't tell me that I missed my check-in, then I wouldn't feel criticized," right? We just own it. So we don't ask them to fix it. We don't blame our partner for how we're feeling, and we don't act on our feelings, meaning we don't walk away from a conversation. We don't defend. And so we share emotions, and maybe there are some hard ones. You say, "Hey, I'm feeling really criticized in this moment, and I recognize that you are not criticizing me. And I know that this is probably part of my childhood, and I'm going to figure it out." Because we as addicts steal that healing space. We do. We steal it all the time by making it a part of us and by sharing in that way. Like, here's what I'm feeling. Now you know what I'm feeling. And I'm also going to tell you that I'm going to manage this. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to call my sponsor. I'm going to bring it into group. I'm going to bring it in with my coach. we don't steal that valuable space,
Hmm.
which is that relational healing that partners need.
Hmm. I think that just is another reminder how important it is to have that recovery team on board.
Mhm.
And it's not just one person. It's not just a sponsor's not enough. I mean, in my ideal world, everybody would have a coach, a sponsor, a therapist, and a group on board at all times so that
Absolutely.
we have everybody, we have the best chance we have of getting the support that we need because nobody should walk this. I don't think healing's possible alone. Maybe it is. Maybe not a fair statement to say, but your chances go up so much more when you have that whole team on board. And so that's such a good reminder. And that ownership piece is huge. That ownership piece that you talked about, Scott,
Hmm.
can really that's an important piece for a spouse to hear. I'm recognizing that I'm feeling this criticized. I'm
Hmm.
also have this new awareness that this is probably related to one of my childhood woundings, and
Hmm.
I'm I'm gonna take this. That ownership and the responsibility and that accountability
Hmm.
is huge. Even if the thoughts about she's criticizing you don't match what she's from her perspective, if she
Hmm.
can see that you're seeing that, like effort typically goes a long way. Healthy effort, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect most of the time.
Hmm.
It just doesn't. We know you're not perfect. And so
Yeah.
that effort and that acknowledgement of the unhealthy thinking and the action on what I'm doing about it without her or the betrayed partner driving that bus, being the
Hmm.
ones going, well, you made that about me, and what are you going to do about it? Maybe you should call your sponsor. Maybe you should talk to your coach, or maybe you should bring that up to group. That puts us in that parent, child, student, teacher role, and we don't want to be there. So that's a huge piece of that rebuilding trust and creating safety is going, I'm recognizing my unhealthy thinking. I am acknowledging it and I'm doing something about it. I'm going to reach out and talk to my
To-
support team.
Totally. And at some point, I think partners and addicts fully get on board that, hey, this thing is about his nervous system. This thing, this addiction, this break in our marital vows is about his nervous system. And for years, his nervous system has been like a black box in their relationship, right? Nobody knows anything about it. Um, so now we know that it is about his nervous system. We do need to share what's going on with our nervous system because otherwise, I don't know why partners wouldn't think, well, I wonder if he's acting out again. We have to, it is giving them the safety that we can manage our emotions. Because when we start to put the dots together, when I wasn't managing my emotions, I was acting out. I was using pornography. So I have to be doing something with my emotions now. So we give our partners safety by letting them know what I am doing with my emotions now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you bring up a point I want to ask you about because this is in the last couple of years, my perspective on recovery for both sides has shifted, and at least my awareness about the importance of the nervous system piece
Mhm.
has really come front and center in my own work and in the work that I do with my clients. So, where, what do you do for yourself or for your clients? Like, where do we start with that nervous system, that healing, that somatic piece of healing? What is your perspective on that?
Yeah, totally. Um I think it's super important. For me, um it starts with a lot of the emotions, right? And just checking in with emotions, understanding emotions, really checking in with the body. And through each session, there's going to be times when somebody will bring up, oh, I don't know, something that happened in the last week. And all of a sudden you can hear uh, the tone of the voice change, the speed of the way they're talking, and just say, okay, let's stop right here. Let's stop right here and what's happening right now. Let me know what's going on in your body. Where are you feeling it? It's super important,
Hmm.
unbelievably important. And while I am not a somatic practitioner, so it's not my wheelhouse, but I totally believe in it, did it for my own healing. So just mindfulness practices are so necessary. Knowing the body for me, I definitely when my child, so I have abandonment wounds, and that is my first indicator. And it always feels like five arrows through my heart. It's never four, it's never six, it's always five. And it's my first indicator for when something has happened. And so today, my wife and I have a really good, joyful relationship, and things will happen where I will feel abandoned out of absolute nowhere. And so I have to know that signal.
And not this is the other thing, and this kind of goes along with the comment that just came in, that it starts with where the emotion started and the belief that is tied to that emotion. Usually starts as a youth and a
Mhm,
trauma that triggered a need that wasn't being fulfilled, and the receptors
mhm,
in the brain tie to that
mhm,
need that causes an emotion. So those
mhm.
receptors in the brain,
Sure.
we're
Yep.
we're talking about that physiological response.
Mhm,
Um, and it's not about making it go away. It's about recognizing it when it comes,
mhm,
getting curious about it, making space
mhm,
for it, and then choosing something different when it
mhm,
comes up rather than our old deep seated neural pathway that has led us down this path to where we are today. We have to then choose something different, which again goes back to that we got to slow it down. And like you said in that example, like, okay, hold on a minute. What are you noticing? Where's
mhm.
that? A question I like to ask sometimes is like, if that had an age, what age would you give it? Like when or how
Sure.
long, when was the first time you remember feeling something similar to that, and trying to help them make those connections. But yeah, it's so much more about than just about understanding. Like the help her feel, help how you feel app is a really good place for people to start that don't have any language of it, and that's the tip of the iceberg. That's like
Mhm,
that's the tip of the iceberg. And then we have to get deeper and we have to slow down and we have to make different choices. So it's not even about making those triggers go away. It's about noticing them when they do come up, having curiosity and compassion for them, meeting that little girl or that little boy wherever they're at,
mhm.
not abandoning that part of ourselves from this wise adult version of ourselves, and then choosing something different. So I think that's one thing too, that a lot of times this misconception that, well, when I'm healed, I won't have any pain or I won't have any triggers anymore. And I haven't found that to be true for myself. I think I'm just more of a trigger ninja now than I'm working to be a trigger ninja than I because the triggers aren't gone. It's just that now, most of the time, I like to try and do something different with them when they come up and make that connection to where it's coming from, even beyond this marital challenge, but childhood
Yeah.
connections.
Yep. Yep. And said differently, just reframing. And I always give this example, and it is a real life example. So, one night, um, my wife's headed to the store, and I say, "Hey, honey, can you grab me a lemon from the store for what I'm making for dinner?" And so later on in the day, I go to start making my dinner, and hey, honey, where's the lemon? And she's like, "Oh, I forgot." No big deal to somebody that doesn't have abandonment wounds. To me, I get the five arrows in the heart, like I don't matter, nobody cares about me, all this stuff. And but I know the five arrows feeling. So I can immediately stop and I have a little conversation with my 6-year-old and I let him know this is not what you think it is. I reframe it in the moment. And, later on over dinner, I have a chuckle with my wife about the little work I had to do. And she's like, "You're kidding me." I'm like, "No, but we learn to understand our triggers, reframe them to reality because mine are, they're not. They're a perception of the present based on the past.
Mhm. Yeah. I also think it can be helpful if you're in this place, or hopefully if you're working towards repair, if when you can get to this place where you're sharing your work with each other and you can talk about the different parts of yourself that you're learning, and you have more awareness of that little girl or little boy version that you
Mhm.
can share it with each other. That has helped give my husband and I some different language when one of us is activated. We had a real, I'll share a real life situation too recently we had, and I actually had a really connecting moment the night before we went to bed, and he'd he'd shown up really well, but then I laid there and I got activated about something else. And so then all night long I was mad. I woke up angry, and I said right off the bat, because old me would have sat on it for a few days and just been mad. But I said, I just want you to know where I'm at this morning. And this is what's come up for me overnight. And he stepped in and held good space for me. And I said, I appreciate that. I'm not really ready for that yet, because my angry 17-year-old wants to take out your little 8-year-old boy right now. So I need a little more time to work on this. And he goes, fair enough. I can give you time to work on that. And then I was able to go. I personally went on a raid run and worked with my angry teenager for a little while, and we were able to come back for a little bit later. But it can be, if you can speak some common language, um, and understanding, and then it kind of separates not the accountability from it, but I can see. I actually have pictures of both my husband and I, too. One of us when we're like 3 or 4, each of us, and one of us when we're like 8 or 9. And I have a lot of compassion for that younger version of him. Sometimes when I'm activated about present day something, I don't have a lot of compassion for him today. But when I can remember that his activation is around, it's that old, I can have some more compassion for each other. So that's probably more higher level recovery, relational repair stuff, but maybe something to work for when you can share your parts work with each other and get to know each other's parts a little bit more. It will help you understand a lot of the reasons why you respond the way that you do, or each other does, to different situations. So,
Yeah, thanks, Hali. And I finally had a second to read Crystal's note in the chat and totally agree. My childhood wounds, and it does, I love the beliefs work, and the beliefs that I had as I started doing this work is I'm unwanted, I don't matter, and I'm not good enough. And what I recognize is that these things that we grab in childhood turn into our default switch,
mm-hmm,
right? So that's we are defaulted to that place of that's who I am until I do something about it. And my body wants to keep flipping it back to I'm unwanted, I don't matter, and I'm not good enough. So that's where daily practices of esteeming myself and knowing, I know these things about myself more than any other part of me because I want to have them stop affecting my relationship and my life. So I really want to know about them. So when the lemon thing happens, I can immediately connect to, hey, I get what this is,
mm-hmm,
right? It's not a seven-alarm fire. It feels like a seven-alarm fire. And I can help myself reframe this that it's a simple miss by my wife, which is not a big deal and not against me.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, You said something I want to highlight too, is this is a daily practice. This is not something that you
Mhm.
can just like cognitively know and think you understand and be able to pull it out of your hat in the moment of activation. This is like, those are things that we should be practicing outside of the relationship. We should be practicing it at the store, at work, in the car if you have road rage, or, emotions. Anytime you get an opportunity to practice what emotions are coming up for you, what meaning you're giving it, where you're noticing in your body, and reframing it through that curiosity. That constant daily practice is what's going to give you the ability to actually do it and show up differently relationally. Because I don't know if you find this, Scott, but for some reason it's more difficult with my spouse, the one I love the most, than it is with a
Yes,
stranger in the
of
store.
course, of
So,
course.
so we have to practice outside other places and with ourselves in order to be able to bring it into our relationships. And it's not
Uh,
just a one-time thing.
totally. And we said we'd start with, we said our conversation tonight. I always think this is like the hardest thing, right? So let's just jump into the hardest thing. And what we know is that most of the guys have some, most of the addicts have some piece of I'm unwanted, I don't matter, I'm not good enough, I have to be perfect to be loved, my feelings don't matter, something adjacent to that in their childhood. And at discovery, and certainly through early recovery, it's going to feel like his partner is validating that in him,
Hmm.
right? It's going to, by her questions and everything else that are completely valid, it's going to feel like he's not good enough. So, we're in this situation where her pain causes his pain, and then the wheels fall off the bus. And that can't happen because the wheels can't fall off the bus. She has to be able to express her pain. So the only thing we can truly work on is helping him to not feel the pain from such an intense level at what she's sharing.
Yeah. Yep.
And it takes a lot of work. It takes everything from somatic experiencing work to mindfulness work to going back to childhood and understanding what's going on. But those are the hard pieces. That's why all these are so very complicated and so very painful.
Yeah. And I think it's so important that you have, if you're a man in this recovery, that you have another circle of men who can sit with you in it and can help you and support you in that, because that's not actually your wife's job. She's got her own stuff she's working through, and it's not her job to be that support for you. And so, if you need support, if you don't have that, we have a lot of great resources that choose to support individuals through groups and individual coaching and intensives. So, I'm just going to throw a couple of links in here as we're closing. If
Groups were the absolute key to my healing.
yeah,
There's so much shame in this healing. And when you can be among other men who are in this healing space, I feel like it really breaks down the protections and barriers almost more than anything else.
yeah,
I love men's groups, and I just wanted to comment on your thoughts around practice, Hallie. Um, the brain doesn't know a big difference between real and perceived.
hmm,
So if you have had a difficult conversation with your partner the night before where she says, "Hey, you said you would check in um, once a week, every week, and you haven't done it in 3 weeks, and you feel criticized," you can practice that conversation and your responses and how you wish to respond. You can do it on the drive to work. You can do it while you're having breakfast. You can replay that and practice what you're going to say and feel the emotions. You can do all that practice.
hmm, yeah, love it. Okay, Scott, thank you so much for this really important conversation
You
tonight.
bet.
Enjoyed chatting with you. Thank you all for being here. I've thrown these links in the chat. There is we've both mentioned that the somatic and nervous system piece is important. There's an upcoming somatic intensive for both men and women. I think that, well, I know the next one for women is coming up in next week. There's still a couple spots left if you are um, looking for an intensive. There's a betrayal trauma intensive coming up next week in for women. And then the next one after that's the Help Her Heal intensive. And then in May is our women's somatic intensive, which I happen to love. Oh, also, just got off a meeting before this. We have a couple of spots left in our second week of the Costa Rica retreat. So if you're a woman and you want to join Amy and Alana and I in Costa Rica, would love to have you do that. That one's going to be epic. So, lots of great resources. We'll send the links to these out in the follow up email with the recording if you want to listen to this again. We thank you so much for being here, and please reach out if you have any questions or need some support. We're here to help you. So, thanks so much, Scott.
Thanks, Hallie.
See you soon. Talk to you soon,
You
I'm
bet.
sure. And thank you all for being here.